Watch this.
First one side, now the other. We're doing another fact check on the open primaries initiative on Idaho's ballot. Today, the pro position of Prop 1. When it comes to elections, what should be the barriers? Legal citizen? Sure. What about language? Well, several viewers believe so, but that's not what the law says.
They get to call it what they want if they get there first.
Well, I guess that's why we have Newfoundland. But closer to home, who got there first and called it Gem County? No, it wasn't for its rare rocks. Outside money trying to influence in-state elections. It's confusing, costly, and corrupts confidence in Idaho elections. Those are all claims made by the opponents of Proposition 1, perhaps the most contentious question on the Gem State's November general election ballot. Yesterday, we fact-checked an anti-Prop 1 political ad put out by Idaho House Speaker Mike Moyle. Today, the other side. You may have seen a new pro Prop 1 ad go public today. Joe Paris, he's going to walk us through the context and content of its claims.
The group behind Proposition 1 now has new ads running on local TV and across digital and social media channels. Take a look.
For over 40 years, Idaho had open primary elections. But then, corporate special interests and party elites closed our primaries.
In 2007, Idaho's Republican Party started action to close primary elections to only allow registered Republicans. Primaries went into code in 1970 as an open format. And after several court battles and a new Idaho law, 2012 marked the actual first election that included a closed primary, meaning you needed to be a registered Republican to vote in the GOP primary. Like you would hear in 2024, Idaho GOP leaders worried in 2007 about crossover voting from people not registered as Republicans.
If you're going to be a Republican and vote in the Republican primary, you need to be a member of the Republican Party.
There were certainly several entities on the corporate and community level that wanted to see this change made, 2 closed primaries. But KTVB reporter Allison Uten reported in 2007 it wasn't loved by all Republicans.
Many of Idaho's top Republicans opposed the change, including Senator Larry Craig, Governor Butch Otter, the Secretary of State, and the Republican Party's own chairman. But the majority of those in the Central Committee voted to the contrary.
Now 275,000 Idaho voters are shut out.
This number is in reference to unaffiliated voters in Idaho, people who are not registered with the party. Those voters can't vote in the closed GOP primary. The Democrats have an open primary, so they would be allowed to vote in that one if they wanted to. But all unaffiliated voters do have the choice to affiliate as a Republican if they wanted to do that, and then by doing so, they could vote in the closed primary.
Proposition 1 returns the tradition of open primaries to Idaho, allowing every tax-paying Idahoan to vote in our most important elections.
First part is true. Proposition 1 would open primaries to one general race. The top 4 vote-getters, regardless of their party, would go to the general election. Second thought needs a little context. In the current format, to be clear, voters can choose to vote for whoever they want in any election and can choose to affiliate with whatever party they want. Nobody is prevented from registering as a Republican to enter their closed primary if that is what someone really wants to do.
Voting yes on Prop 1 for open primaries will help us get back to how politics used to work and give all Idaho citizens the freedom to vote.
Proposition 1 does open the primaries, but it does not, as the ad suggests, get back to how politics used to work. The ad does not mention that Part 2 of the Proposition 1 proposal involves a ranked choice general election format. Top 4 winners in the primary go on to the general election ballot. Voters rank the candidates by preference from there, choice 1 through 4. And voters don't have to rank beyond their number 1 choice if they choose not to. You could just mark one candidate. By the way, the entire format is new to Idaho, and to be clear, it is not how Idaho used to do something. And a good question I wanted to answer following the fact check on the campaign money coming in from out of state for pro-Prop 1 peeps. Here's the comment we got yesterday, #208. Please tell us where the money came from for the against Prop 1. Is that out-of-state dark money? That's from Dan in Boise. It's a great question. Few main groups to look at. Idaho Rising, which paid for the anti-Prop 1 ad we looked at yesterday. Most of their contributions have come from inside the state of Idaho. A group out of Missouri did contribute $50,000. One Person, One Vote PAC, which gave $125,000 to Idaho Rising, has almost all of their money donated from Idaho. Another group against Prop 1 who I interviewed here on the 208, Idaho Fair Elections. All of their donations came from Idaho. Republicans for Idaho is another group. Almost all of their money is from Melaleuca from Idaho Falls. And Melaleuca, if you go look on the website, they put a lot of money into this race. And by the way, this is not to say there isn't any out-of-state money pushing against Prop 1, but the groups that are buying ads and doing interviews on it, those are the ones that we're seeing really physically invested.
In your research today, you did find that there was one small sliver of time when Idaho did a ranked choice election.
They did. In the early 1900s, there was a 2-year, I guess, span where they toyed with this idea
of choosing two.
Choosing top two and going from there. You and I did some research throughout the day. I would love to know if anyone has any historical information on this.
They'd be pretty old if they did.
They would be 100 years old, but that's all right.
1909. All right, thank you very much, Joe. Well, it's supposed to be the right and responsibility of every eligible American, voting in our elections. Of course, not everyone does, with just 66% of voting age Idahoans participating in the 2020 general election. And while Idaho doesn't track ethnicity when it comes to voting, we do know Latinos and Hispanics are the second largest voting bloc in America and in the Gem State, which is why last week KTVB aired a series of stories on Latino voting in Idaho. And one of those we shared had to do with ballots being printed in Spanish, specifically in Clark County.
Correct. We are the only county required to have it on our ballots.
That's Stephanie Stewart, the county clerk. She says they have the Spanish translation because of the Federal Voting Rights Act.
There's a code that says you have to meet a certain criteria. You have to have either 10,000 people or greater than 5% who are only Spanish speaking.
The code is Section 203 and extends protections to language minorities, including Spanish speakers.
Okay, so that story, which aired in KTVB's Voto Latino special, prompted several text messages that weren't exactly the most inclusive. Karen in Boise wanted to know, why should Idaho have to publish the voter information in Spanish when they moved to the U.S.? Karen says she wouldn't go to another country and expect that information in English. She just feels like they should learn English if they're going to live here and vote. Bob, also from Boise, if you have to be a citizen to vote, and to become a citizen, you have to be able to read and understand English, why are we printing ballots in umpteen different languages? Janice texted in from Horseshoe Bend to reiterate the only citizens voting part and the reading and writing in English part, and she asks, why are they printing anything in Spanish in Idaho? And finally, perhaps the most xenophobic of the texts, Debbie wants us to please quit talking about Latino voting rights because, according to Debbie, 95% of the adults are undocumented, and therefore, if you can't speak, read, or write English, you have no right to vote. Okay, so there are about 250,000 Hispanic or Latino people in Idaho. And Clark County, while the smallest county by population, it does have the highest concentration of Latinos. Of the 790 people that live there, per the 2020 census, 42% are Latino. So to answer Janice and Karen and Bob's questions of why should we have to publish information and ballots in Spanish? Well, it's because of federal law. In 1975, Congress found the English language barrier to be voter discrimination, meaning for those not fluent in English, they were excluded from the voting process. So that year, Congress amended the 1965 Voting Rights Act, adding Section 203, which requires states, counties, and cities, or whoever holds an election, to provide ballots, registration forms, and other election materials in more than just English. But that requirement, that isn't across the board. As you heard the Clark County clerk say, the population of non-English speakers in that jurisdiction has to be at least 5% or greater than 10,000 people, and the English literacy of that population has to be below a 5th grade level, which brings up Janice and Karen and Bob and Debbie's point of you must be able to speak English to be a citizen. Well, yes, sort of. It's true, English is a course in American schools, and there is an English requirement to becoming a U.S. citizen. You have to demonstrate the ability to speak and write English, yes. Unless, of course, you're older than 50 years old and have been in the U.S. for at least 20 years. But what does it mean to demonstrate the ability to speak and write English? On the day of the citizenship test, the U.S. immigration officer is going to ask a candidate to read and write 3 sentences in English, and you only have to write one or read one of them correctly, just 1 out of 3. But they aren't reciting and scribbling down complex thoughts and sentences. Of course they're not. To give you an idea, here's just a sample of what is required for English proficiency that is, to become a U.S. citizen.
Who can vote? When is Thanksgiving? What is the largest state? What do people want in America?
Interestingly, the answer to that question was people in America want to vote. I don't know why. I don't know why that's the answer. But you can see those aren't exactly James Joyce or William Faulkner type sentences. So yes, understanding English is a requirement of citizenship. But 5-word sentences don't really qualify as above 5th grade level. And that's why federal law requires ballots, registration forms, and voter information in something other than English in places where there are language minorities. And right now, Clark County in Idaho is the only place where this is legally required, which it has done since 2022. Not that other counties couldn't do the same if they chose to. Latinos make up 13% of Idaho's population. And other than the cost of printing those ballots and information or having to adjust the obvious discriminatory attitude apparent in those text messages, what is the downside of making voting more accessible? Perhaps more Idaho counties with even larger Latino populations should consider it and consider making it known, considering what 30-year Clark County resident and U.S. citizen Maria Martinez explained why she has never voted in an Idaho election.
No, yo no sabía que había palabras en español para cuando uno va a votar.
¿No sabías eso?
No. No es que no había votado, pero este año sí.
But this year she will. And just to be clear, if your county does not provide a non-English ballot, you are allowed to bring an interpreter with you to your polling place. There's so much more valuable information in the Voto Latino special, including barriers to Latino voting, reaching young Idaho voters, and making voting more accessible for all. You can watch the entire Voto Latino special right now on KTVB Plus, KTVB.com, and KTVB's YouTube channel. A death warrant and death by police. Two of the stories today in the 411. Abby Wilt has more on all of that.
Idaho's longest-serving death row inmate is set to be executed next month. Thomas Creech's execution in February was unsuccessful because IDOC medical staff couldn't set an IV line. Creech was served with a new death warrant this morning. According to the document, unless there is a stay in the case, Creech will be executed on November 13th. The Ada County Coroner's Office said the man who died after a police shooting is 43-year-old Lucas Alleman from Star. Last night, the Ada County Sheriff's Office says deputies shot and killed Alleman, who was a suspect in a felony sex crime case. It happened at the Optimus Youth Sports Complex. A Sheriff's Office spokesperson says Alleman made suicidal statements, and preliminary information showed that he had a gun. She says when deputies approached him at the park, he did not listen and pulled his gun out. That's when 2 deputies shot at him. The Boise Police Department is leading the Critical Incident Task Force investigation. A student-led mental health program was in action today at Twin Falls High School. The Sources of Strength group hosted their 2nd annual No One Eats Alone luncheon today. Twin Falls High School students and staff were encouraged to eat a free meal together and make meaningful connections. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Wilt.
Sure, there are gems in Gem County, but that's not why it's called that. There are other rare finds that could be the reason behind the name. We want to see some of your gems in the form of text messages about today's show. We're also looking for hard-to-find stories about the Gem State. You know the drill. Text us, 208-321-5614. And as always, include your name and the hashtag #the208. That way we know it's for us and we can share yours at the end of the show. From the Centennial State to the Buckeye State to the Empire State. You know, we can learn a lot about our country by our state nicknames. Those would be Colorado, by the way, which became a state in 1876. Ohio, home of the Buckeye tree, and New York, which is just a bit bombastic, isn't it? The Empire State, really? Anyway, here we have Idaho, the Gem State. But why? Well, you're probably aware it's because of the abundance of rare minerals that have been found in all corners of the state, from the star garnet to the opal. But what about Gem County? There's got to be a lot of rare rocks there, right? Well, as Hunter Funk explains, think again.
Idaho's been known as the Gem State since it became a territory in the 1800s. You would think maybe that would be our first county name in the state.
They get to call it what they want if they get there first.
But the first one named was Owyhee County in 1863. By 1915, 35 other counties were established. Then finally, in came number 36, Gem County. With 44 total counties, it was one of the last few to be named. So why Gem?
In early 1862-63, when gold and silver discoveries are making this region attractive to Euro-Americans, to American settlers, there are a couple early settlers who arrive in the Payette River Valley.
The gem in Gem County wasn't describing the rare stones settlers were after, but rather the richness found in the land. Pioneers settling near the Payette River quickly discovered that the region was ideal for agriculture, especially in Emmett.
There was also a reference to the gem of the Payette, that is, you know, the best town on the Payette River. Places like McCall, places like Payette itself might take issue with Emmett being the gem of the Payette, but the idea of, of Idaho, gems, that sort of thing was already well in play.
The water made for great irrigation, the soil was fertile, and the farmers along the river started raising crops to supply the Boise Basin mines. Several irrigation projects made the area grow as the major service center for a farming and fruit growing valley. Besides agriculture, what's considered the other gems in Gem County?
Logically, it makes sense to me.
Some might say Idaho Governor Brad Little is one after growing up there. Or maybe the history that still stands in downtown Emmett.
That sort of commercial core of historic buildings, and there are dozens of wonderful, important historic buildings that contribute to the character and feeling of that town. I love the Gem County Courthouse. It was built in the late 1930s as a part of our national New Deal efforts to put Americans back to work, designed by the Boise firm of Turtelot and Hummel, and sort of an interesting mixture of classical elements and Art Deco elements.
Outside of Emmett,
if you look further, you'll see wonderful historic places like Black Canyon Dam, critical to the economy, the agricultural history of Gem County.
There's also the Roystone Hot Springs, which have been around since 1923, and Ola's Community Hall, the two-room schoolhouse, and church built in 1910, they're still being used today. While Gem County's treasures might not sparkle in the literal sense, the true gems of the region lie in its people, history, and agricultural legacy. Now, I am also taking suggestions. We didn't get to Sweet, so anyone who's been to Sweet knows people from Sweet. Because it's located in Gem County, I am dying to know just how sweet it is in Sweet, Idaho.
There's not much there in Sweet, Idaho.
Right?
So, I mean, the choices have to be pretty few.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a shop I don't know about that we gotta highlight, but I felt like that was the one spot that we really missed out on.
All right, Sweet. We got any suggestions for what's sweet in Sweet?
Yeah.
Let us know.
Sweets?
Sweet.
Sweet.
Such lovely fall views we have around the area right now, but probably with some of the wind and the rain that we're seeing outside, we're probably losing a little bit of those leaves. So thankfully we have those views in the pictures to enjoy for now. So today we've got some really big changes underway. It's a significant pattern flip for us. We're about 20 degrees cooler than we were this time yesterday, depending on where you're looking. And we are seeing some rain outside right now, and we're expecting those showers to linger tomorrow. We could even see a stray thunderstorm possibly tomorrow across the area, but those breezy conditions will continue over the next 24 hours or so. And then we see the temperatures get even colder into Thursday night and Friday morning, setting the stage for our first widespread freeze of the season. So you can see it's a big difference with those temperatures, where we've got the upper 60s in some of the areas to the east, but over in McCall, a little bit more to the west, we're in the 40s and 50s in other Treasure Valley spots as well. And it is a big difference from what we saw yesterday. As I mentioned, McCall closer to a 30-degree drop, but now we're starting to see the temperatures to the east create even more of a difference from that temperature that we saw yesterday. So here's where the rain is right now. You can expect more of that moisture to continue to make its way to the east, giving way to some spotty showers for tomorrow. And we are expecting some of that to fall as snow in some of the mountain spots, especially as we see those colder temperatures into Friday as well. And so you can see throughout your 7-day forecast that we will continue to see those temperatures in the 50s and 60s.
All right, final minute or so on this Wednesday. Let's get to your message like this one from Scott, who got 2 political flyers in the mail today. One was yes on Prop 1, which only states open primaries and not ranked choice voting. And the other, which was a no ad, only states ranked choice voting, not open primaries. So I guess you want to make an educated decision, you need both flyers. Yeah, pick your poison, Scott. That's how it works, I'm guessing. You need both. I voted early in Ada County. The ballots are generated and printed on the fly. The incremental cost of a second language ballot would be trivial, says Jim. It's a good point. If they were printed right there on the spot, that's absolutely true. But the election materials may be a little different. Brian, maybe this is a good time to remind your viewers that the USA does not have an official language. It's not English. Thanks for reminding me, Robin. Got a couple of those. Yeah, that's true. We don't have official language, nor do we have official religion. I'm absolutely appalled by the discriminatory text from fellow Idahoans. What has happened to humanity, says Leanne. Come on, Idaho. We can do better than that. This one from Tony in Boise. Democracies work on the informed consent of the citizens. Naturalized citizens pay their taxes and deserve to understand what we are voting for or against, making a case for ballots in several languages, apparently. Roy here. When a person or horse comes into sweet Idaho, on the road, there's a spring of water coming out of the hillside. Hence, sweet comes from the water. So what's sweet in sweet? That would be the water. Now we know. Now we don't have to do the story. But it's pretty simple, pretty explanatory. But thanks for letting us know, because we didn't know that, and now everybody else knows. Again, you want to catch any part of that Voto Latino special that we did last week that aired over the weekend. It is on all of our channels, all of our apps. Find it at ktvb.com or KTVB Plus. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.